But I'm leaving today. I'm gonna find a place where nobody knows my name. The river that leads to the ocean.
My name is Marcus Kuhn. This program is called the Gypsy Gentleman. I've been tattooing for 22 years. When I string back through all the cool memories I have of traveling all over the world, I started thinking, wouldn't it be cool if I could share all that? What it's like to be a traveling tattooer, what it's like to interact with all these great artists and to drop into their lives. Hopefully I'll be able to expand your ideas of what tattooing is. And hopefully I'll be able to teach you a little bit about the world of tattooing, a little bit about human interaction, a little bit about music, about style, about originality. That's the mission of this. This is episode number 1, New York City. We're in the heart of it here in the Big Apple. We're going to be doing a project where we go to the Rubin Museum on 17th and 7th, which is one of the largest collections of Tibetan and Himalayan art in New York City. And I'm going to be taking there with me Thomas Hooper of London, England, and Virginia Elwood of NYC, 2 of the best tattooers in the city right now. And I chose New York City because I've been tattooing in and out of New York for 20 years. I used to work at Fun City for Jonathan Shaw 20 years ago when there's only 2 shops open on the Lower East Side, maybe 4 in all of Manhattan. Now you go to Lower West 4th and you're going to find 20 shops on one block. So the whole tattoo landscape in New York City has changed a lot, as has the landscape of New York. So we're going to drop in, check out all of New York. You're going to get to see the streets. I'm going to take you to a really cool record store in Carroll Gardens, which is a super cool neighborhood in Brooklyn. You're going to check that out. You're going to meet some cool folks over there. It's run by tattoo artists, and they collect antiques, and they sell coffee and old school LPs. It's going to be super cool. New York City, as a location for tattooing, has a certain mystique. In the 1930s on the Bowery, there was a series of tattoo shops that had a thing on the window that said Black Eye Specialist. Basically what that meant was, watch out for us because we might give you a black eye. It started that they would have a barber shop, they'd have a penny arcade, and they'd do tattooing on the side. They probably ran hookers, sold drugs, and God knows what else went on in those places. But all the sailors and street ruffians would all go in there and get these old school American designs, maybe get their picture taken afterwards, which is why there's a lot of cool photo documentation of that, and then do a little bit of drinking, a little bit of brawling. Say you had to go back on the ship, you're a Navy guy and you got a big old shiner, you'd go in there and they put makeup on your eye to cover it up so that you didn't have a black eye. But the sideline was that the windows had these super cool gold and black, gold-leafed eyes in the center of the glass that said Black Eye Specialist, which I always thought was super cool. In fact, in one of my early shops, I stuck that on the window and I had to explain this 20 times a week, what a black eye specialist is. That sort of rough and tumble and New York City tough guy thing was definitely associated with tattooing here in the city. Even when I tattooed here in the late 80s and early 90s, there's so few shops here and it was all still legal and underground that it had that kind of mystique, that kind of tough side to it, that quality. That's pretty much evaporated now, but New York City in itself still has that mystique. And like most things in New York, the surface is a little eroded. You know, it takes some time to break into New York. You have to kind of look underneath, and then you find it. And I'm going to take you back in a little bit. I'll show you a little bit how it looks on the outside, how it's a little rough, and then when we get inside, you get to see all the cool stuff that's going on here in New York City. Okay, here we are on the Bowery. It's directly above Delancey Street, Lower East Side, Lower West Side. This is the famed Bowery where all the sailors, hookers, criminals, and lowlifes used to congregate in the 1930s. There's also a hotbed for prostitution and whatnot. It happened to be where all the original tattoo shops were in this neighborhood. Right here you can see this is the Bowery. It carries all the way up here until you come up to the Chrysler Building. This whole neighborhood still has a little bit flavor of the old days. It's a little bit run down. There's a couple missions along here. You see bums sleeping on the street. Buildings are all burned out. Still has the magic that it used to have back in the day. Pretty cool. This is the center of all tattooing in New York City. Most of the people walking up and down the street have no idea what used to take place here back in the 1930s. And this is it. In the 1930s when you know, tattooing was still very isolated from the bulk of society that thrived in those environments. Kind of seedy New York underbelly, which I think is cool. Here I am bright and early, taking you around the streets of Brooklyn. It's a little bit miserable today and rainy, but there's some pretty cool places around here. I love this neighborhood. There's some really cool shops around here and restaurants. And I'm going to take you to this one right over here called Black Gold Records. It's run by tattooers, and they also sell really cool old antiques, and you get a cup of coffee. This is my kind of place. Check it out.
How you doing?
Nice to see you. Really good, really good. We're having a fucking great day. I want to get a cup of coffee.
Alrighty.
Can you hook me up with a coffee with maybe, I know it's probably like against the rules, but you got Splenda?
Yeah, I have Splenda.
This shop is basically an amalgam of all the things that I think are super cool, like old school antiques, old school tattoos, a nice gentlemanly cup of coffee, some records, like old, you know, super cool records. So I just have to bring you down here and show you this place and introduce you to it. So how long you guys been here?
It's been about 9 months at this point.
Cool. Well, and what's the reaction? People digging it?
Yeah, I mean, we hit the ground running, you know?
Yeah.
People,
I mean, you're turning over stuff, the antiques go?
Everything moves. Everything
That's
moves.
cool, man. That's
We're
cool.
running to keep up.
Yeah.
We're hustling.
And the records, too?
Everything. We run out and get them. We get them.
You go like people's houses?
People call, we put out ads, word of mouth, people respond.
That's cool. Like, how did it work? Like, you got together with, I guess, with Daniel Santoro?
Daniel and his wife Summer, we all got together.
Okay, and did he do tattoos on you? He's a tattooer, right? In that Smith Street around the corner?
Yep, we knew each other from when we lived back in New Jersey.
Okay,
Went to high
cool.
school together.
Hey, what's up, man? It's nice to see you. I haven't seen you since I tattooed you.
I know, in the motherland of my family's vacation home.
Indeed. What are we doing? Like a lobster or something with a slice of lemon?
That's correct.
Very cool, very cool. How long you guys had this going on?
About 9 months, if I'm not mistaken. About 9 months we've been open here.
But you're tattooing all the time too, right?
Yeah. Still tattooing full time.
Yeah, it's Smith Street, which is like right here in the neighborhood.
That's correct. 2 blocks
And yeah,
away.
who else is working there?
Steve Boltz, Eli Quinters, and Bert Craft.
Yeah, that's a pretty
Four of
heavy duty
us.
lineup you guys got going on. You're doing a lot of buying of the antiques and then sort of
Yeah,
just
that's
flipping them,
what
and
I
you
do.
got new stuff
That's
coming in.
pretty
and
much
stuff?
what I do, yeah.
Kind of
People
stuff.
ask like what it is that I carry, and I can't really exactly put my finger on it, but again, it comes more down to aesthetic. Because, you know, the tattoo shop is 2 blocks from here, so as far as the stuff I was carrying, I was sort of, you know, catering to maybe that clientele. Because that's what I was collecting myself, you know, through collecting, I have a relatively large collection of antique tattoo flash, which led me into collecting folk art in general, which led me to collect carnival stuff, which led me to collect kind of just general antiques, you know, so it's kind of that evolution. So it was the stuff I was buying anyway.
You know what? It's awesome to see you again. I wish I had seen you more often, but I'll stop by.
Yeah,
Come on, and I wish you guys best of luck.
Thank you so much.
Cool,
Appreciate
man.
it.
Awesome.
Mark.
Okay.
All right. Bye, buddy.
We're going right now. We're going to go meet with Virginia, and we're going to meet with Thomas, and you're going to see what cool people they are, and you're going to get to see the amazing art at the Rubin Museum right now. It's on 17th and 7th in Manhattan. It's one of the largest collections of Tibetan and Himalayan art in New York City, and we're very lucky to have permission to go in there and shoot the Himalayan art collection. So I chose Thomas and Virginia because I feel like it's going to be a really good mix.
Yeah,
I'm so glad you could be here today.
yeah, thank you for making me part of it.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And the lady of the day, Miss Virginia. What's up, sweetheart? We have total access to the Himalayan art collection. I'm going to take them around. You're going to get to see them being exposed to all this really cool Himalayan art. Then we're going to go together and we're going to use, all 3 of us are going to draw 3 medium-sized tattoos using our inspiration in that moment in front of all that cool art to create 3 pieces where we meld all of our styles. We're going to interact with each other, and then we're going to do those tattoos for free on people. We're going to do them to show you that you can tattoo for the sake of tattooing. You can do it for the sake of the art, and that sometimes 3 consciousnesses are better than 1. Okay, we're in the Rubin Museum now. We're in the Himalayan Gallery, and I got Virginia Elwood and Thomas Hooper with me, so we're going to roam around now and look at some of this cool art and begin the process. feeling in here is really transcendent. You know, there's something about being the presence of so many pieces of art that when they were created, that people were coming from like a really good spiritual place, and that kind of emanates out. So let's walk around a little bit and look at some of this cool stuff in here. Fairly sort of simplistic and very base sculptures, which are more ornate. And then, of course, and it sort of re-emerged. And so when I look at the things, it's the thing, I'm drawn to things like in this tanga, this is the wheel of life, the wheel of existence. And this form is sort of like very traditional Tibetan tanga painting, and it's been overplayed a lot in tattooing, you know, the Tibetan skulls and the, you know, fierce Tibetan deity and stuff. But there's something about that, like when I tattoo, I love that power. I start collecting mentally all the stuff like really cool color dynamic contrasts, like the deep rich greens they use versus like a really terracotta red. You know, I'm really attracted to that kind of explosion, the fire and energy of this stuff. It's so primitive, and yet the aesthetic is so much more evolved. This stuff, is there anything that attracts you in this art? Like how you would interpret a tattoo, or is it?
The impact it has on me is almost purely visual. You know, so dynamic. It's achieving what I'm trying to achieve more in my tattooing, which is just imparting, like you were saying, that power.
Yeah.
And you know, the really dynamic images, a lot of black, a lot of color, maybe some texture in there. You know, so you know, when I look at this, I don't see, okay, I would take that and I would tattoo that image this way, but I definitely look at the color. I look at the different textures in it. The composition, everything is inspiring, but in more of an abstract way for me, I think.
So let's talk a little bit about New York, because you're not from New York originally.
From upstate New York,
okay.
Rochester.
But then you did a little walkabout.
I did a lot of walkabouts.
Okay, so give us a quick walkabout.
Right, the quick walkabout. Born and raised in Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
Was a dancer. Rebelled, got my first tattoo when I was 16 from a guy with one arm up in Rochester, who
Really?
maybe you know who this is. I don't remember his name.
What a great story.
One arm, and I thought that I had made it up. I thought for years, how could this tribal pot leaf on my shoulder have been done by a guy with one arm? But then, through the miracles of Facebook, the guy that I went with, this guy Brian, I wasn't even friends with, but he had a car and a fake ID, so we decided to go get tattoos. He got like a skull with lacrosse
With a
sticks.
pot leaf?
No, I got the pot leaf. He posted on my Facebook page years later, I haven't talked to him in 15 years, and he says, remember when we went and got our first tattoos together, and you got the guy with the one arm? And so I knew I hadn't made it up, but I really thought that that was fake.
How did you stretch your skin?
I remember having to sit like this, and he had a stump. He did have a stump.
Oh, okay.
There was no gloves involved, but I remember, I mean, it's,
Maybe a Magnum condom.
the tattoo doesn't look like he really stretched the skin that much.
Yeah, I guess, well, I mean, it's not like you need Michelangelo to do a tribal pot leaf. They basically gave all the tribal pot leaves to the one-armed Andy there.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
Well, so anyways, so then I moved down to Manhattan when I was maybe 17 or 18. I wasn't tattooing at that point. I was still trying to become a professional ballet dancer, and failed on, well, not failed on that. I chose not to do that. It was too much. Not enough balance in that lifestyle for me. It's really hard. So I moved to Boston.
Yeah.
Didn't know anyone there. I just moved there, enrolled in community college, and took some drafting classes. Like, maybe I'll be an architect. I don't know. I'm just going to try things. My mom was an artist. I never really went down that path because I was really focused on dancing, you know. At that point, tattooing was being legalized in Boston. This was in 2000, I think. And I don't know how I got it into my head. I mean, I had friends who were tattooing up in Rochester, Ben White and Jet at Love Hate.
Yeah, cool
and
guys.
Ben did a lot of my tattoos. He covered up a lot of my 16-year-old tattoos. And then I met Fat Rom, who was opening the first legal shop in Boston.
Okay, yeah.
And met you. I was a pain in the ass. I went in every day. I showed him my terrible drawings. And I didn't know they were terrible, though. I had no idea, really, about tattooing or the art. And luckily, he took a leap of faith and was kind enough to really teach me and guide me. And luckily, you were there, and you were such a big, huge influence on me. I was there for 5 years learning. And then I moved out to Boise, Idaho, because I wanted to have a change. And I remodeled a 100-year-old house.
Yeah.
It took 2 years, and it was beautiful. And I love it in Boise, but I couldn't live there forever. So when I got the opportunity to come work at Adorned, I grabbed it.
So here you are, and you're at this point in your career, and you seem to have worked out a dynamic to go through it and stuff. So
I think for me, like taking a break from things is really important. You know, I needed those, you know, year or two focusing on something else to come back and feel renewed and refreshed and inspired to become a better tattooer.
Rededicate to tattooing.
Yeah.
It's like a long-term marriage.
Yeah.
You know, there are times that are difficult, and you don't know if you love them anymore.
Yeah.
And then you fall back in love with it. And then there are days of ecstasy.
Yeah.
When
Yeah,
well,
I'm
right?
married to a tattooer.
So she understands when you come
Yeah.
home and stare at the wall, right?
Yeah,
You're
it's
like,
perfect.
"But you're kind
Well,
of,
we're selfish people.
You can apologize,
All
but
we
that's
do
kind of
is
true.
Draw. We're
Yeah, yeah.
dicks. I mean, you know, like that's why I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, I mean, I'm very selfish with my time. We paint and we draw, and we talk about tattoos. And we have a dog. And she understands, luckily.
Yeah, yeah. Presumably they start, this is like all done in clays. Or is it wax? Oh, it is lost wax. I never knew that. It's the same process like the American Indians would use.
Yeah, so for each one, it has to be made out of wax.
But it's lost. They only carve it once. For each one, there's no casting like the next one's cast off the
That's
first
why
one.
it's so,
Dynamic.
Wow,
that's
that's
so
amazing.
sacred, you know?
Okay, so if we were looking out into this room, just as an experiment for like our tattoos that we're going to do today, and try and find like some direct inspiration, I'm looking through here, what stuff like calls to you?
Mostly, like, I look at things from different angles, like, it would be, there's obvious repeating patterns on different things, but like, different viewpoints, like, the idea of like, looking at something, like there's that little kind of bell on the far left, and there's a stupa there. Mostly the stupas I really like, but the concept of looking at a stupa from above and the geometric structure and the patterns related around it.
Cool, I
So
never
you
thought of
wouldn't
that.
even
That's
know
cool.
that it was a stupa. So it's like it'll just be this concentric circle emanating into
But it has the
squares
same
and stuff.
pleasing geometry,
Yeah.
so somehow it has the
I
same
mean,
effect on you.
If you look at the grid or how a stupa is constructed, or like if you view a bell from above, like directly, and how it's drawn, it will be a mandala. And that's why it's created
That's
like
cool,
that.
man.
It's created because there's a certain sacred geometry to how they're drawn, and fixtured
that.
around it, and that's.
I love that. But I've heard you say a number of times, and we haven't really discussed it today, that really the bedrock is that Samoan stuff, the graphic punch that you felt when you looked at that.
Yeah, there's the discussions with Thomas interview, and I based most of my work off of this kind of structure. Is like you look at those Polynesian, Australasian, Samoan, Indonesian warriors covered in tattoos, and they look like, you know, they'd be coming off their piece of wood in the sea onto your beach, and they'd lift up their arm with their spear, and you'd be like, what the fuck? And then their spear is in you, you know? There's that kind of impact and punch, you know, that kind of like...
So that is just the way that it successfully merges with the geometry of the body.
It kind of fits with the body, and it's ornamenting the body, but at the same time, it gives it power, in a sense.
You mentioned to me something about color seeming unnatural.
Yeah, I just like black because it's carbon. It's what we are. It's just, it's inert with us. It's not really going to react or do anything. It's just going to be in there.
Almost like it sits
be
better.
natural.
It looks more appropriate.
It'll age with your skin beautifully, and it's just there. You know?
So when do you think that shift took place in your work, that you really started to focus like 90% into values of black?
It was a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
I think, as a bit of a kind of seeing so much color work across the board, not just not from being in America, but tattooing is so colorful right now. There's a lot of color in a lot of stuff, and to me, I just kind of wanted to push away from that, like other people have, and not have things
I
look
remember
like.
once having a discussion into you, and there was sort of like this ground feeling there, like, what do things like? It don't look American. But I don't want anything that looks like an American did it.
It was John Dixon and myself had this discussion, and he kind of phrased that. And it's not that we don't want stuff to look American, but it's like so many people want their stuff to follow that kind of American internet kind of, you know. The main pioneers are amazing at it, but there's so many people that just kind of doing
that's
it
my pride.
repeating
it's so
it.
redundant.
So rather than trying to repeat that, just move away, you know. And when someone looks at your body or your tattoos, it's like a photograph album in an antique store. There's all these memories, all these pictures, all this language. You don't know any of it because it may be a swallow with the heart that says mum, but really it doesn't mean that. It's got the meaning of that. It's they're little markers in time, you know, and which is why I also like American traditional for that, because it's just like plotted all this stuff, and you know, it doesn't mean what it really means. So you could just have dots, and they would just be markers, you know, or lines or whatever. It doesn't need to be so literal.
But it does. See, your tattooing is simple and sort of elegant, and you know, it parallels kind of your lifestyle.
Yeah, and you know, and I it's just wanting it to be kind of peaceful and nice, you know, which is I want my life to be. But then I do stuff that is very detailed and complex because, you know, that's kind of how the mind is, you know.
Yeah.
You can disappear in there.
Cool. So, if you were trying to tell somebody about the experience of being in New York as a tattooer, what would that be?
It's got its pros and cons, you know.
Okay.
There's so much going on, so much to do. There's museums, there's, you know, all the obvious things, art shows every night, music shows, there's a great energy to it. On the flip side, most of us work so hard to be able to afford to live here that we don't really get to treat ourselves to the luxuries that the city can provide. You know, but at least it's there. It's knowing it's there that's great. You know, and the
But also
people,
you need the people, right?
the people, the opportunities. It's incredible. You know, you tattoo, you know, maybe 3 people in a day, and one of them's an art dealer, one of them's like works for Meals on Wheels. You know what I mean? It's just such a wide range of interesting people, and there's so many different circles orbiting, and you could be into the same exact thing as someone else and not have your paths cross once. But also the city is so serendipitous. You know, you do seem to meet the right people at just the right time for just what you need, you know.
Right. Good to go then, huh? Cool.
I tell myself it's not about where I'm going, it's the path that I'm on. And I kind of feel like my path's like I kind of need to re-establish the path and just be like, okay, where do I want to direct this? Where do I want to go?
Well, what is it that what was it that you were thinking? What path did you take?
It was just like looking at the family tree of my influences, you know, like Curly and Alex and how they did stuff and how they influenced Zed and, you know, Thomas and Mike the Athens and then John Dix and Tass, and then wanting to fit into that kind of genre but not wanting to emulate any of them. So it was just looking at things the same way but trying to come up with, we'd always be coming up with like, I found this book and I found this pattern.
You were drawing a lot then. You sent me a whole series of books where you had like basically cataloged and created endless new patterns and, you know, progressions and stuff. Clearly you were like doing, you know, 14 hours a day, tattoo in the daytime, draw all night.
I try. But yeah, and that was just kind of, I'm just obsessed with patterns and just repetition and kind of using things and just trying to learn how things look good on the body. Constantly struggling with just living a good, compassionate, humble life, which is so difficult because we have this incredibly narcissistic kind of egotistical job that, you know, I'd love to never publish work and just, but then I will be busy. Who would I tattoo? You know?
In this sea of millions of tattooers, there's also millions and millions of clients, and you can find a way to connect with them, you know, through your art and just through your personality. You know, you don't need to be a superstar. You don't need to only do that cool guy tattoo, because it's cool guy tattoo now, but in 10 years it really won't be. You know, so you know, stick with what feels right to you, and just keep pushing yourself to grow and be aware of what's going on. This is Colby Smith, a good friend and coworker of mine, who was gracious enough to let me tattoo him today. And you like what I did on you, right?
So
you love it.
Cool.
This is my client Chris. He's been a long-time client and now friend, and today we tattooed his thigh, and I just want to thank him for, you know, letting me bring him into this and put some art on it. Thank you very much.
I'm happy to be a part of it. Thanks for that time.
Pleasure.
Hey, this is the end of the tattoo shoot. I'm Marcus, and this is my client, Marcus. We got a cool tattoo on his arm. Thanks, man, for the opportunity. It was awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, cool, right?
Thank you so
Okay,
much.
see ya. I hope you support the Gypsy Gentlemen so that you can get to see all of the world, and you get to see all the great tattooers of the world, and you can support this project so that we can continue to travel and we continue to show you the great things that are out there to be seen. So, all right. Is that good?